My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 34 years old. And for almost 7 years, I believed my husband and I were building our dream life together. We bought a house. We had 2 children. We built a small business. We survived a difficult pregnancy. We survived financial problems. We even survived the year my husband lost his job. I thought we'd been through everything. Then one Tuesday morning, I opened our mailbox and found a letter from the county recorder. I almost threw it away. It looked like junk mail. But something caught my attention. My name was printed on the envelope. I opened it, and the first line made my hands go cold. Notice of ownership interest and recorded property transfer. I read it twice, then a third time. Our house wasn't entirely ours. According to the document, my mother-in-law owned 40% of it. I ran upstairs. My husband was still asleep. I stood beside the bed, holding the paper. "David." He opened his eyes. "What? Why does your mother own part of our house?" He sat up, and the expression on his face told me everything. He already knew. I met David when I was 26. He worked at a coffee shop near my office. I used to stop there every morning before work. He remembered my order. Large iced coffee. No sugar. Extra milk. One morning, he handed it to me and said, "You know, most people eventually change their order." I smiled. "Most people eventually stop coming here." He laughed. "Fair enough." 3 weeks later, he asked me out. 6 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, he proposed. His mother, Linda, wasn't happy. I could tell immediately. At our engagement dinner, she smiled constantly. But her eyes never left me. When David went to the bathroom, she leaned across the table. "You're serious about him?" I laughed nervously. "Yes." Because David has always been very trusting. I didn't understand what she meant. "I love him." She nodded. "I'm sure you do." Then she smiled. "Just remember that marriage is complicated." That was my first warning. I ignored it. We got married the following summer. My parents helped us with the wedding. Linda didn't contribute much. She said money was tight. I never blamed her. After the wedding, David and I rented a small apartment. 2 years later, we found the house. It was a 3-bedroom property with a small backyard. It wasn't perfect. The kitchen needed renovation. The basement flooded when it rained heavily. The upstairs bathroom had ancient blue tiles. But I loved it. We put an offer in. The bank approved our mortgage. We needed a $40,000 down payment. We had $27,000 saved. We were short $13,000. Then Linda offered to help. She said, "I can lend you the rest." I was grateful. We signed a simple loan agreement. No interest. 5 years to repay. It seemed generous. But there was one condition. Linda wanted to be listed as a financial contributor on the property documents. David told me it was normal. It just protects her. I asked, "Does it mean she owns part of the house?" He said, "No." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." So I agreed. We bought the house. For the first few years, everything was fine. We paid the mortgage. We renovated the kitchen. We had our first child. Then our second. Life became busy. Linda started visiting more often. At first, I welcomed it. She loved the children. But gradually, she began acting like the house belonged to her. She'd walk into the kitchen and say, "You should move the table." Or, "This room would look better with different curtains." Or, "David, you really should repaint the living room." I would smile. Maybe. One afternoon, I was cleaning the garage. Linda walked in. She looked around. This is wasted space. What do you mean? You could turn this into an apartment. For who? She smiled. For me. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. You've got plenty of space. Linda, we use the garage. You could park outside. I ignored her. A month later, she brought it up again. Then again. Then she started telling relatives. When I eventually move in with David, we'll convert the garage. I confronted David. Why does your mother think she's moving into our house? He sighed. She's getting older. That's not an answer. She's just talking. She's talking about moving into our house. Don't make it a big deal. That became a pattern. Whenever I complained about Linda, David told me I was making things bigger than they were. Until one day, I came home from work and found Linda sitting at our kitchen table with a folder. She looked at me. We need to talk. I put my bag down. About what? The house. My stomach tightened. What about it? She opened the folder. I've been reviewing the property documents. I looked at David. He was standing near the refrigerator. He wouldn't look at me. Linda pushed a paper toward me. Did you know I have an ownership interest? I stared at the document. No. She smiled. I thought so. I turned to David. Did you know? He said nothing. David. He finally looked at me. Yes. I felt like someone had punched me. How long? Since we bought the house. Why didn't you tell me? It wasn't important. I laughed. Your mother owns part of our house. It's not like she controls anything. I looked at Linda. How much? She answered. 40%. I stared at her. 40? She nodded. I turned to David. You told me she was just a contributor. She helped with the down payment. She gave us $13,000. Exactly. How does $13,000 equal 40% of a house worth almost $400,000? Nobody answered. I felt sick. I picked up my phone. I'm calling the attorney. Linda stood. There's no need. There is now. She looked at David. Tell her. He sighed. Then he said, Mom helped us with more than the down payment. I froze. What does that mean? He looked at the floor. She paid some of the closing costs. How much? About $6,000. Anything else? Silence. I stared at him. David. He finally said. She paid for some renovations. How much? Maybe $9,000. I did the math. $13,000. Plus $6,000. Plus $9,000. $28,000. Still nowhere near 40%. Linda interrupted. It wasn't just about the money. I turned to her. Then what was it about? Family. I almost laughed. Family. She nodded. I wanted to make sure I couldn't be pushed out. Nobody was pushing you out. Not yet. That sentence changed everything. I looked at David. Did you agree to this? He nodded. When? Before we bought the house. And you never told me. I thought you'd understand. I shook my head. No. Then I asked the question I was afraid to ask. Can she sell her share? Linda smiled. Not without your agreement. I felt relieved. Until she continued. But I can force a sale under certain circumstances. My heart dropped. What circumstances? Financial hardship. I looked at David. What does she mean? He didn't answer. Linda stood up. I think you should read your mortgage documents. Then she left. I waited until the front door closed. Then I turned to my husband. What the hell is happening? He rubbed his face. It's complicated. No, I said. It's actually very simple. Mom helped us buy the house. And you gave her 40% ownership. I didn't think she'd ever use it against us. I stared at him. Why would you think she wouldn't? He looked away. Because she's my mother. I felt tears in my eyes. And I'm your wife. He had no answer. That night, I didn't sleep. At 2:30 in the morning, I went downstairs. I opened the filing cabinet. I found the original purchase documents. Then I found something I'd never seen before. An amendment. It was dated 6 months after we bought the house. I read it. My hands started shaking. Linda hadn't simply been given 40%. She had also been granted the right to approve certain financial decisions involving the property, including refinancing, selling, and taking out additional loans against the property. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Rachel. I showed her everything. She read the documents. Then she looked at me. Did you sign this amendment? No. Did your husband? Yes. Without telling you? Yes. She nodded. Then you have a problem. How big? Potentially very big. She explained that David had signed several documents without my knowledge. Some affected my financial interest. Others affected the property. But the biggest issue was something called a transfer agreement. It showed that Linda had recently attempted to increase her ownership from 40% to 60%. I stared at the document. When? 3 months ago. I looked at the signature. David's name. Why? Rachel looked at me. Because your husband signed it. I felt like the room was spinning. I called David. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then he texted. We need to talk tonight. He came home at 7. He didn't take off his coat. He just stood in the doorway. I held the document up. Did you sign this? He closed his eyes. Yes. Why? Mom needed protection. From what? You. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. From me. She thinks you'll eventually divorce me. I laughed. I didn't even know she owned 40%. That's why she was worried. I stared at him. You're telling me you gave your mother more ownership because she was afraid I would divorce you. He nodded. That's insane. She helped us. She helped us with $28,000. She's invested in our family. She's invested in controlling it. He became angry. Don't talk about my mother like that. I stepped back. Your mother has more rights to our house than I do. That's not true. Then explain this. I threw the document onto the table. He didn't. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Mom wants us to sell. I stared at him. What? She found a buyer. For the house? Yes. When? Next month. I couldn't speak. He continued. She says we can make enough money to buy something smaller. I looked around our home. Our children's drawings were on the refrigerator. Family photos covered the hallway. The height marks we'd drawn on the kitchen wall were still there. You already agreed. He didn't answer. I knew. I walked upstairs. I packed a bag for myself and the kids. David followed me. What are you doing? I'm leaving. Sarah, I don't know who you are anymore. He grabbed my arm. I pulled away. Don't. He immediately let go. Then he whispered, Where will you go? My parents. He sat on the stairs. For the first time, he looked scared. Please don't leave. I looked at him. Then tell me the truth. He stared at the floor. And finally he did. The truth was worse than I expected. Linda wasn't trying to sell the house because she wanted money. She wanted us out. She had already found a luxury apartment she wanted to buy. She planned to sell the house, take her 60%, then use the money to buy a condo. But there was more. She had been pressuring David to divorce me. I stared at him. What? She thinks you're bad for me. How long? Almost a year. And you never told me. I thought it would go away. Why did she think that? Because you don't like her. I laughed. I don't like being controlled. She says you turned me against her. Did I? He didn't answer. Then he whispered. No. I sat down. David. Yeah. Do you want this marriage? He looked at me. Yes. Then why are you letting your mother destroy it? He started crying. I don't know. For the first time, I realized something. David wasn't evil. He was weak. And sometimes weakness can hurt people just as much as cruelty. The next morning, I met Rachel again. She told me something unexpected. There's a way to stop the sale. How? Your mother-in-law may have ownership rights. But the transfer to 60% may not be valid. Why? Because your husband couldn't transfer your marital interest without your consent. I felt a wave of relief. So the house can't be sold. Not yet. But there's another problem. What? Your mother has filed a claim against the property. For what? She says she invested more than $150,000 over the last 5 years. I stared at her. That's a lie. Can you prove it? I thought about it. Then remembered something. Linda always paid in cash. Or so she claimed. I searched our old emails. Receipts. Bank statements. Texts. I found dozens of messages. Every renovation. Every payment. Every loan. And none of them added up to $150,000. Not even close. Rachel smiled. This could work. We filed our response. 2 weeks later, Linda was served. She called me. You have no idea what you're doing. I said, I finally do. You'll lose everything. No. I said, you might. She started screaming. You are destroying my family. I replied, no. You've poisoned my son against me. No. You've always hated me. I paused. Linda, I never hated you. She went silent. I just didn't know you were capable of this. Then I hung up. The court hearing was 6 weeks later. Linda arrived with her lawyer. David sat beside me. He looked terrified. The judge reviewed the documents. The fraudulent transfer was challenged. The claim that Linda had invested $150,000 was examined. Her lawyer presented bank statements. But they didn't match. Some payments were personal expenses. Some were gifts. Some had already been repaid. And several receipts had been altered. Then Rachel presented the original documents. The judge asked Linda, why did you increase your ownership from 40% to 60%? Linda answered, because I paid for the property. Rachel asked, can you prove that? Linda couldn't. Then Rachel presented a document I'd never seen. It was the original loan agreement. The one from when Linda gave us the $13,000. It clearly said, this contribution does not grant ownership rights beyond the 40% interest specified in the original property agreement. But that wasn't even the most important part. The final paragraph said, "Any future transfer of ownership requires written consent from both spouses." I looked at David. He looked at me. He whispered, "I didn't remember that." I believed him. Linda didn't. The judge ruled that the transfer to 60% was invalid. The sale was blocked. Linda retained her original 40%. But she could not force a sale without our consent. The house was ours. Or at least 60% ours. After the hearing, Linda approached us. She looked different. Smaller. She looked at David. "You chose her." David looked at me. Then back at his mother. "No." Linda looked confused. "I chose my family." She started crying. "You are my son." "I know." "And she took you away from me." David shook his head. "No, Mom." He took a breath. "You pushed me away." Linda stared at him. For once, she had nothing to say. She walked away. We didn't celebrate. Because there was still a lot to repair. David and I went to marriage counseling. He had to learn how to say no to his mother. I had to learn how to trust him again. It took months. But slowly, things changed. He apologized. Not once. Not twice. Many times. And more importantly, he changed his behavior. He removed his mother from every financial document. He signed a new agreement protecting my ownership. We opened separate accounts. We rebuilt trust. And we made one rule. Nobody gets financial control over our marriage again. Not his mother. Not mine. Not anyone. A year later, Linda came to our house. She stood on the porch. She looked at the children playing in the backyard. Then she said, "I owe you an apology." I didn't say anything. She continued, "I thought I was protecting my son. You were controlling him." She nodded. "I know." She looked at David. "I was afraid of losing you." David said, "You almost did." She cried. Then she looked at me. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I replied, "That's probably good." She smiled sadly. "But I hope one day you will." I didn't promise. Because forgiveness isn't something you owe someone. It's something they earn. Today, Linda still owns 40% of the house. But she doesn't live there. She doesn't make decisions about it. She doesn't control our finances. And she doesn't walk into our home without calling first. David still speaks to her. Sometimes. Our relationship isn't perfect. But it's healthier. And our children don't know anything about what happened. They just know Grandma loves them. And that's enough. As for the house, we kept it. We renovated the garage. But not for Linda. We turned it into a small studio for me. Sometimes, I sit there late at night and think about how close we came to losing everything. Not because of money. Because we allowed someone else to decide what our marriage should look like. I've learned something from all of this. A person doesn't have to steal your money to control you. Sometimes they steal your choices. They make you feel guilty for saying no. They convince you that loyalty means obedience. And eventually, you stop asking what you want. You only ask what will keep everyone else happy. That's what happened to David. And for years, I thought the problem was his mother. It wasn't. The real problem was that he had never learned to stand up to her. Until he almost lost me. So if you're listening to this, and you have someone in your life who constantly says, "I'm only doing this because I love you," pay attention. Love doesn't require ownership. Love doesn't require control. And love doesn't give someone the right to make decisions about your life without your permission. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do for your family is draw a boundary. Even when they call you selfish. Even when they call you ungrateful. even when they tell everyone you're the problem. Because sometimes you're not destroying the family. You're simply refusing to let someone else control it anymore. If you were in my position, would you have stayed in the marriage after discovering what David had done? Or would you have walked away? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Stories Behind Closed Doors. Because sometimes the person standing inside your house is the person trying hardest to take it away from you. And sometimes, the biggest betrayal doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from someone who promised to protect you. I'll see you in the next story.